If you're not already using calisthenics as part of your strength training program, then I think you're leaving an awful lot of gains on the table, not only in terms of performance, but even in terms of aesthetics. In this video, I'm going to explain a little bit how you can incorporate calisthenics exercises into your regular training program in order to see massive improvements across the board. So first of all, what are calisthenics? It means bodyweight training. That means things like press-ups, it means sit-ups, it means pull-ups, chin-ups, leg raises, bodyweight squats, that kind of thing. That's what everyone's familiar with. Those are the basics. But there's a lot more to bodyweight training than just that. And this is where a lot of the confusion comes in, because a lot of people will start out doing press-ups, doing pull-ups in their rooms. This is how so many of us got started with weight training, with exercise. And that's because calisthenics are low risk. You can't drop a weight on your head. They don't require any or much equipment, and they're great for beginners for those reasons. Everyone's got a body, and so everyone can do bodyweight training. However, you get to a point where you can easily do hundreds of sit-ups, maybe hundreds of press-ups, 10s or 20s of pull-ups, and so you need extra challenge, and that's when a lot of people transition from bodyweight training to weightlifting, and they just forget all about the press-ups and all about the dips, and they just focus on weight training. But that's a mistake, because there's plenty of ways that you can make calisthenics far more challenging, and not only is it more challenging, but it's more challenging in a different kind of way to weightlifting or bodybuilding type training. So basically we need to up our calisthenics game. We need to transition to more difficult exercises. We need to start looking at variations on the press-ups, on the pull-ups, on the sit-ups. We need to find more difficult ways of doing those same exercises. An obvious way to do this, for instance, would be to remove one of the contacts that you have with the floor or the bar. So for instance, if you're doing one-handed press-ups, now you're lifting the same amount of weight, the same amount of body weight, but using one hand instead of two. There's 3 points of contact instead of 4. So it's not double the weight, but it's certainly a lot more weight that you're lifting. But the most fundamental way to increase the challenge with bodyweight training is to use levers, and that basically means that you're lengthening or shortening the lever arm. So this basically means that you're moving the distance between the point of contact with the floor or the bar and the center of gravity. So say you're doing regular press-ups, normally your hands would be about here, and that means that your center of gravity is directly over that point of contact, which means you're just pushing up your upper body. And like I say, there's 4 points of contact, so it's not your whole weight, but the center of gravity will be about here, directly under your hands, and that's about half your body weight. And that's why that's a relatively easy exercise for most people. But now if you move your arms out in front of you like this, like a Jack LaLanne fingertip press up, now all of a sudden the center of gravity is still roughly around your torso, but your point of contact is up here. And that means that you need to lever that weight, and the amount of power you need to generate to do that is considerably greater. And the easiest way to demonstrate this is with a chair, obviously. So if I want to lift this chair, then I might hold it here, see, near to the center of gravity. That's relatively easy. But now, if I move the grip to here, suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult, because now the center of gravity is further away from the point of contact. And a challenge is with a regular weighted chair, grab one leg from the bottom and try and lift it up. It's much harder. So that's basically what's happening when you move your arms up or down. Even in a press up, you make it more difficult. So you've got your Jack LaLanne fingertip press up. Like I said, you basically look like Superman with your arms spread out in front of you. You've got your Maltese push-up where your hands are kind of here and twisted slightly. You've got your pseudo planche press-up, which is the planche position, so your hands are further down your body again, and you're performing push-ups like that. Similarly, if you do, say, a reverse push-up, body weight row, so your heels are on the floor and you're holding a bar like this and you're pulling yourself up, then moving your feet closer or further from your body is going to make the challenge more or less difficult. And that is how we progress through calisthenics in the majority of cases. Either we're removing points of contact from the floor, or we're moving them further away from the center of gravity in order to make that exercise more difficult, or we're doing both at the same time, such as in planche, where not only is the center of gravity completely way off, but you've also removed your feet from the ground, so it just requires an awful lot of power and control. So what a lot of people will do who get into bodyweight training will they'll chase after these bodyweight skills, and that means that they're going to go through progression. So a skill might be something like the planche, and you've got things like the muscle up, where you pull yourself up and over the bar. You've got things like the front lever, where you're hanging from the bar, pull-up bar, and then you lift your legs straight up like so. You've got one-handed pull-ups, you've got handstand press-ups. All these can be considered skills in bodyweight training, and to get these skills, the most conventional method of training is to use progressions, and that means you're going from an easy exercise to a slightly more difficult exercise to a slightly more difficult exercise until you nail that skill. So in the case of planche, you might start off by making sure you're really good at just regular press-ups. Then you might progress to pseudo planche press-ups. Like we said, that means moving your hands into the planche position further down your body so you're leaning forwards. Or you can just do leans, just hold that position. Then you might start doing press-ups in that position. You might start doing tuck planche, which means you're now lifting your legs off the floor and tucking your legs in. You might start doing straddle planche, which is a planche with your legs apart, which is shortening your body and therefore bringing that center of gravity slightly closer, making it slightly easier. And then you might eventually progress into full planche. There's lots of other progressions you can do, things like crow pose or frog stand. All these things will help you to get to that point where eventually you just kind of take off and you've got it. My planche, by the way, still needs a lot of work. I'm stuck kind of with my arms bent. I can't quite straighten them out as I'd like to, but otherwise it's coming along quite nicely. Another way that you can make these calisthenics exercises more difficult and simulate having a heavier weight is to do them explosively, and that's where plyometrics come in. Things like clapping push-ups, things like clapping pull-ups, things like depth jumps, that kind of thing. When you start doing these exercises, then you're accelerating off the ground. And for instance, when you do a depth jump, that means that you're jumping off a chair or off a platform and then straight up into the air of about 42 inches off the ground, you're actually increasing the amount of weight, the amount of force you're absorbing by 3 to 4 times your own body weight. So by being explosive this way, you can build a lot more explosive strength and a lot more rigidity in your tendons, but at the same time, you're also going to be simulating a heavier weight, because as far as your body's concerned, that acceleration is very similar to just heavy resistance. And so in bodyweight training, in calisthenics, this is the equivalent of progressive overload, because you're starting off with something you can do easily, press-ups, pull-ups. You're building up to something that you can't do easily, like muscle-ups or one-armed pull-ups or planche or handstand press-ups. So that's how you're increasing the challenge, increasing the resistance, and at the same time, your muscles should adapt and grow. I actually think that bodyweight training is the most functional form of training, because in the wild, like I say, you wouldn't be picking up really heavy weights all that often, but you would be climbing trees, jumping over ravines, you're squatting, ducking, crawling, climbing up rock faces. So you would need that kind of bodyweight ability, that kind of strength to weight ratio. And at the same time, when you train like this, it's a slightly different angle every single time, and there's no consistency. It's not like this nice clean cut movement that you use every time. Each time you do it, you're going to be in a slightly different position and you're going to involve slightly different muscles. It's a constant kind of battle. It's a lot like the kind of lifts that the old-time strongmen did, where they would demonstrate real mastery and control over the weight. In bodyweight training, you're showing mastery and control over your own body, and that's awesome. Because when you're doing this, it might look like a static hold, but actually you're working incredibly hard. You've got all these tiny movements correcting your balance as you start to give out in one area or in another. You're keeping your body rigid.
The reason for our brain development and our departure and ascent to the top of the food chain is related to movement complexity.
You look like a wizard to people. It looks like magic, and this is why we call these skills bodyweight skills, not just exercises. They're chasing after these moves that look almost superhuman. And when you develop that kind of balance, that kind of supportive muscle, when you train the kind of muscle groups that we so often forget, that's when we see amazing crossover into every other area of our athleticism, parkour, martial arts, other lifts. So when you train the scapular muscles, you're going to see your bench press go up, you're going to see your deadlift go up, you're going to be much better at doing mounts when you're doing parkour, at doing hurdles, just all of this that otherwise you wouldn't see. And even aesthetically, like I say, there's a benefit, because when you train like this, you bring out all those smaller supportive muscles. Since I've been chasing after planche and things, I can see my serratus muscles much more clearly, which adds more detail between my pecs and my lats. So even though I'm not incredibly lean, I look more ripped because I've got more of those smaller muscles. Likewise, training the transverse abdomini, keeping my body rigid through levers, through planche, has given me a much flatter looking stomach, so that my gut's not hanging out, And again, with a higher body fat percentage, I look more lean as a result. To a lot of people, that's the whole story. If you ask them about bodyweight training, they'll tell you it's just about progressive overload by going through those progressions. However, it's not quite that simple, because when you transition from one exercise to a slightly harder progression, you're not just lengthening the lever arm. When you go from the press up to the Jack LaLanne press up, that's not all you're doing. At the same time, you're also changing the involvement of specific muscles. You're moving the focus from bigger, stronger muscles that you're probably more used to training, like the pecs, like the rectus abdomini, to the smaller supporting muscles, or the muscles that aren't those mirror muscles that you often forget, like the shoulder muscles, like the shoulder girdle, the serratus muscles, the core, like I say, the legs, the glutes. They're all getting involved now because you've got to keep your body rigid, you're at this strange angle, and this means that you're not going to see quite the same adaptations as you would see by just lifting heavier weight. But you're never going to be lifting the equivalent of hundreds of kilograms, and at the same time, you're never going to be fatiguing a specific muscle group because you're involving so many at the same time. And so you're going to tire out, not because your pecs are done, but because your whole body is done and you've maybe lost the ability to balance. But if we're creative, we can get around these limitations. One answer is to increase your volume, because with bodyweight training, because you're often not going to failure in a specific muscle group, and because you're only using your own weight, you're not stressing the central nervous system quite as much, you're not causing as much muscle damage, which means you don't need as long to recover as a rule, and you can train more frequently and thereby see some impressive gains even just using bodyweight training. So you can do larger reps, and you can also train, say, every other day if you're just doing bodyweight training. At the same time, I like to use something called mechanical drop sets. And if you've watched this channel before, you know what that is. A mechanical drop set means that you're changing the exercise to go past failure. So in bodybuilding, you might do as many curls as you can. When you can't do any more, you'd lift a slightly lighter weight and keep going. And then you might lift a slightly lighter weight and keep going. That's called a forced rep, or it's called running the rack. Or you might get a friend to help you, or you might help yourself, or you might swing it. That's called a cheat. Whatever you can do to go past the point of failure. So you're using something as heavy as you can use to that point. So you're really maxing out the muscle, and then you're going past that to occlude the blood, to build up those metabolites, and to get that pump that's going to lead to growth. We could do this in bodyweight training if, for instance, you do as many planche push-ups as you can once you've got to that stage. And when you can't do any more, you do pseudo planche push-ups. And when you can't do any more, you do regular push-ups. And then when you can't do any more, you drop to your knees and you keep doing push-ups. Now what you're doing is you're challenging yourself with that hard, difficult move right at the start, and then you're continuing to go past the point of failure. So your pecs haven't given out, like I said. You've just lost the ability, you're not strong enough anymore to continue doing that really complex move. But now you're doing pseudo planche press-ups, you're hitting that same muscle group, keeping it going. And then when you drop down to press-ups, and then you drop down to press-ups on your knees, it's just, you can get these huge reps, these huge counts, whilst at the same time challenging yourself with those difficult movements, and you get an amazing burn that way. Or what you can do is what I do, and incorporate your calisthenics into a larger training program that includes heavy lifts and isolation movements, etc. So I'll normally start my workout either with a big heavy weight, trying to beat a 1 rep max on a compound lift or something, or I'll do an attempt at one of the bodyweight skills that I'm trying to acquire. So I might do an attempt at a planche push-up, or I might do some front levers, or I might try and do a one-armed pull-up, for instance. And by doing that, I'm starting my workout with an exercise that involves lots of different muscle groups, before any of them are fatigued, and then I can go on to really isolate and target different groups and get them to really hurt. And I normally end with some kind of high intensity finisher right at the end. So it's a kind of like power building style routine, and you can do that as well. And I think, like I say, that when you incorporate those movements, not only are you going to see amazing benefits in your lifts, but you'll also hopefully be able to prevent injury, because you're building up those stabilizing core muscles, all the smaller things that help you balance, so that you've got more control over those weights, and so that you're stronger at your weaker positions. And you can even include bodyweight exercises as part of a mechanical drop set that also involves weight. So for instance, I will often do bench press, and then once I can't do any more bench presses on that weight, I will drop to the floor and do push-ups, or clapping push-ups and then push-ups. And doing that, again, really allows me to pull the blood and to challenge my body in different ways and to keep going past failure. And again, that really triggers growth and pump, and I just feel like I've had an amazing workout. So hopefully this video has shown you how to incorporate bodyweight training into a general strength program using weights. At the same time, I hope it's shown you why you should do that and how it can massively improve your strength and performance and your athleticism. At the same time, I hope I've also shown you a little bit about how calisthenics works, how bodyweight training works, and how you could use it on its own if you wish, in order to develop awesome skills, awesome power and control, but even to use it to gain that kind of aesthetic advantage in order to get a proper workout that's actually tough, where you're not just trying a skill and then kind of giving up and going home. You're doing these drop sets that's going to create burn, going to create pump, just like any other workout. And I'll be talking about this subject a lot more going forwards, as well as weighted calisthenics, as well as rock climbing, which is one of the best things you can do for strength to weight ratio. So if that sounds good, then stay tuned and hit that subscribe button. Coming soon, I've got a video on MI6 training and how they develop the soft skills they need to fit in and to get information from targets. And I'm going to be talking about healing. That's been taking a while, I'm afraid, because it's such a big topic and I really want to do it justice and get it right. So stay tuned for all those things. If that sounds good, then thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Oh, and as usual, guys, be sure to check out the full article, which I'll link to in the description down below. That goes into a lot more detail, and yeah, it's a really important supplement for this video if you found anything here interesting. Oh, and also, don't forget, I am currently collecting pictures, videos, and descriptions of your home gyms and your home offices, your own bat caves. I'm going to do a video on my bat cave, the Biolab, and I'm going to discuss lots of other examples from you guys and also from around the web to see how we can create the most productive workspaces and the most awesome home gyms. So if that sounds good and you want to be involved, then head over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/thebioneer, scroll down, find that thread, and then submit your pictures or a link to a video or whatever, and let me know that it's okay to use it in the video.